Good evening, good evening. Welcome along. It is Inspire and Be Inspired, another of our weekly motivational conversations. For the last few weeks, we have been speaking to some rather important people in the world of house music. And this evening, we continue with that theme as we bring to you one of the UK's most respected and most humble DJs and producers. And we are going to be joined by a lot of people who want to come and heap some praise upon him. Let me begin, before I bring Ricky Morrison onto the screen, by saying if you are with me live and you do have any questions, please understand that I will be seeing all of your comments in the live chat on YouTube, and I'll do my best to get to them as soon as a break in conversation. Also, if you're coming back and checking out the recording, please do leave any comments or any questions for Ricky, and I'm sure he will be checking back from time to time to see what you've got to say on what we discussed this evening. So without further ado, let me bring on my guest and say good evening, Mr. Ricky Morrison. How are you, my man?
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure being here. Long time, me and you going way back.
Way back. I'm just double checking because I'm being a little bit flash today. I'm recording in a vertical screen for when I decide to send out some promotional material, and I'm also broadcasting on YouTube, and there was a slight delay, but it looks like we're all in sync now. So yeah, I think everything is good. So yeah, thank you for your congratulate. What's the word I'm looking for? Not congratulations, for your thanks for bringing you onto the channel.
Thank you.
Over the last 2 years, I have been talking to some of the biggest names in UK soulful house music, and the common thread throughout all of the conversations is the name Ricky Morrison popping up in all of the histories. You know,
God, I'm touched. Very, very touched. I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, it's been a journey. 40 years in the game almost, you know, so no doubt I've probably spoken to a lot of the people that you've spoken to. From,
you were there quite heavily in a lot of their journeys. So we're gonna capture that. We had a very quick chat while we were making sure everything was working before we came on air, and what was meant to be a 2-minute tech test ended up 20 minutes reminiscing. So
wow, yeah.
We could easily get go off on a tangent on so many twists and turns in this story. So we're going to try and capture the bullet points of an illustrious career. And once I've got the introductions out of the way, my complete aim is to let you do all of the talking.
Oh wow! Well, I'm sure we're going to go off on a lot of tangents. It's been a long time, so I might say something, then also remember something else, and you know, we have to keep going backwards and forwards. So you know.
Well, that's good.
Buckle up.
Yeah, hold tight. So,
now.
Good evening, Jimmy, and good evening, anyone else that's with us. So, let's get to this. I think we need to roll it back and paint a picture of life for Ricky Morrison. I'm assuming you may be my age, a little bit older, late 60s born, maybe?
No, I'll be 61 this year.
No way.
Yeah.
Really?
October 23rd, 1962, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I thought you were like 55 or something.
I wish I was 55, yeah. Again, yeah. It's been a long time. I've been at it since secondary school, 1979, and we're buying my first record.
Well, let me stop you.
But,
I don't want to hear about 79. I want to hear about life growing up on the mean streets of London town, where exactly you're from, and let me know about, you know,
so London. I'm from northwest London, Wembley to be exact, and a lot of people in the game actually are from northwest London, Wembley around that side. John Jules, Fran Sidoli, Brandon Block, Danny D, all from that kind of area, northwest London. You know, like Wembley, Ealing. Where else? Harlesden, around there. You know, like a Notting Hill Carnival around there, kind of thing. You know, so you know, it's a very healthy hotbed of
And why'd you put that down to? Was that down to the influx of immigration in the late 50s,
yeah,
early 60s?
Because a lot of the West Indian community was there. A lot of the Irish contingent, Italian contingent were like in northwest London, Kilburn, Kingsbury, Wembley.
Mm-hmm. Pugwash jumps up and says, "Good evening, all." I know he's going to be very happy talking about northwest sides. His manner there. Okay, so family, brothers or sisters?
Yeah, I've got one sister, Ingrid. Mm-hmm. She lives in Peterborough. She's a teacher in Peterborough.
Sorry, I didn't hear you. Older or younger?
She's older.
Okay.
Yeah, she did biochemistry and stuff like that. Went to university and stuff. I went down the other side, the music side. Well, actually, no. To be fair, when we were growing up, being West Indian, this kind of game that we're in just wasn't happening with our parents. You had to get a trade. You had to, obviously, dare I say, get a lot better qualifications than certain other people that would be getting the same kind of vacancies, black and stuff like that. So she pushed me through college. I was actually quite good at music when I was at primary school. I was actually, what was it now? I could sing a perfect A, like naturally. And when my music teacher heard that, she said, "You're going to be really good at music." I took up clarinet, got to grade 8 clarinet. Really good, was doing really, really well. But my mum said to me, "You're not going to make any money from music. You're going to go and learn a trade." So you've got to do what your mum says, or else you get a good clap across your face, So I went to college, Wilson College of Technology, got a diploma in electronic engineering. And then I became a computer engineer in the early 80s. Okay. So driving around with a company car, fixing computers and stuff like that. Not the little computers now, the ones with the reels.
Yeah.
And the hard drives, like a 4 megabyte hard drive was the size of a bus back then. Is now, we've got like 64 gig on our phones, So did that. But while I was doing that, I was always into the music. And Going back to it, I was really influenced by, all the radio shows from back in the day, like Mike Allen on Capital Radio, Robbie Vincent on London, was it LWR or something like that? I can't remember now. Robbie Vincent, Mike Allen. I was listening to LWR with like Norman J, Mad Hatter, Trevor. I was heavily influenced by those kind of guys.
Okay, well, that must be a little bit later on, though, surely.
That was like in the 80s. This was like the early 81, 82. Greg Edwards Institution. Used to go to the Lyceum on a Monday to hear him play. And also, clubbing was quite a heavy situation. Me and my friends, about 8 of us, we used to go out from Wednesday to like Sunday to all the clubs. Like Wednesday, we'd go to one place. Thursday would be somewhere. Friday, I can't remember them. It will come back to me as I'm talking. But we used to do a pilgrimage to all these clubs every week religiously. And then on Sundays, we'd go up north to all the big warehouses like Birmingham Powerhouse, Clouds in Preston, the Place in Stoke. Always been into like the American side of things, not because obviously there was a British scene, but more like a more jazz funk scene, like High Tension. Who else was there? I'm going to get a tongue lashing soon because I can't remember the names of the.
Yeah, let's not get caught up in that.
All those kind of things, So
let me just say, joining us bright and early on a Tuesday morning, Paul Farris jumps into
Paul
the chat.
Farris, how are you, Paul?
He says good evening.
Australia. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
We had a great chat with Paul a couple of weeks ago. Good morning, my friend. Steve Reed is with us, Black Wax as well. Jimmy Mack.
Yes,
anyone else passing through, feel free to say hi so I can give you a shout out. Okay, so whilst you were traveling, I kind of feel we got ahead of ourselves, but it's cool. We are where we are.
Yeah, we're going to go backwards and forwards, So
okay, so let me find out about you, sort of like clubbing, pre-partying days. What were you doing at 13, 14 years of age? What was life on the streets saying?
Life on the streets? Well, it was the same as any old young black teenager, throwing pennies against the wall so you can get the most money, throwing the ball against the curb, you know, like that. Oh, you're too young to remember that.
Were sound systems and things like that on your landscape?
Well, I think you'll find every DJ from my era was part of a sound system. I mean, I was part of a sound system called the System Inc., which is based in Wembley. There was another sound system called One Touch, which Fran Sidoli was part of.
Okay.
And basically, back in the day, oh my God, well, the System Inc. for me was very, very, very important part of my life. That's where I actually really got my skills, DJ'd and listening to all types of music. Because it's like, I think there was about 5 of us. Myself, a guy called Joe Bonds, pick up yourself, Joe, Huey Foster, Delroy Yard, there was Nicky Kitson, Adrian, Timothy. We were all from the same area, and each of us would buy certain types of music. I would buy mostly like the soul and funk. Hugh would buy the jazz, the boogie. Joe would buy the two-step. Delroy would buy the reggae. You know, so we encompassed all the different types of music all into one thing, and then we would go and play music to break into empty houses, go to Pronto print out a flyer, dish them out to the high street and stuff, and have a party on that night. And then, you know, we used to build our own speakers, build our own console, you know, like the Mackenzie speakers, the 15-inch speakers. Joe used to build the cabinets, you know, we used to rent a truck. We actually did a party in Wolverhampton, if I remember. We hired a van, remember Ryder trucks?
Yeah.
We go and book Ryder trucks. We put all the speakers in, all the consoles in, built crates full of records and 7 inches. Go to I can't remember where the place was. It was a warehouse, and a friend of ours, Michael Greenfield, was from there. Michael and Colin Greenfield from Wolverhampton. They found a spot, and we went up there and did a party there. A couple of nights, actually.
So this is early 80s?
This is early 80s, yeah. And we were going up against Rap Attack, Trouble Funk, Paul Anderson sound system, Mad Hatter Trevor Nelson, his sound system. We had that. There was, oh my God, there was so many. Seamus Haji had a sound system in the South London. You know, I mean, it actually culminated in us actually, I think we did Carnival. I'm not quite sure, back in the day when KCC were active, yeah. Carnival. We did a really wicked party in off Edgware Road in London. I don't think near Trafalgar Square. A friend of ours, his dad was an estate agent, and he had this house, like a mansion, like 2 floors, huge house. And I remember us doing a party. I think it lasted all weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and it was like legendary. I mean, everybody remembered that party. It was like, you know, we were playing everything, hip hop, 2-step, reggae, everywhere, the sound system, it was absolutely fun. And we actually did a party at the Royal Albert Museum, Victorian Albert Museum, because one of the security guards, he was a security guard in the top floor, and we actually ushered the sound system into this room, and we were to get the people from the station, escort them into the museum up to like a penthouse flat and do a couple of parties there.
I'm listening to this and I'm trying to rack from the back of my brain. Does any of this tie in with Bobby's story? The Lavinia story?
I mean, Bobby was from East. I mean, I met Bobby moving forward when he was doing a club downstairs in London. What was it called now? It was called a Zoo at Cuthbert's or something like that. He used to do a party down there with Steve.
He did tell me this whole story, but I'm not going to drag that from the back of my mind now.
Yeah, I can't remember. But I met Bobby around the late 80s, but the sound system days, this was like 82, 83, around that time.
Okay. I mean, I'm thinking, wow, that's quite young. But now you've told me you've got like 8 years on me. So you were, you were well into it by then.
It's around that time, and I used to buy records like a nutter because the computer engineer had more money than sense. So I was going to a place called Bluebird Records in Church Street, which Abby Shah was running, and Abby he's like God to me. He's my main influence. He's why I'm here today, because I used to go to that shop and buy out the shop every single record I used to buy just for a record, just for one cut on an album. And I remember him saying to me, slow down, Rick, slow down. You don't have to buy everything. But I was buying everything. I mean, I was just like a drain pipe. I was buying everything. I met Norman J at that shop. Met all my peers at that shop. I remember I have a story about Norman J. I was talking to, he was called Norman J Associates. I remember that, from Ealing. And we were in the shop. And for some reason, everybody knew that I was the 12-inch man, because I used to buy 12 inches of all the album cuts. I used to wait for the 12 inches to come out. So I used to buy all 12 inches and albums. But a lot of people were buying albums back then for one cut. But I would buy the 12-inch, sometimes buy two, to mix the instrumental into the vocal, back into the instrumental and stuff. And I met Norman. And the way we got talking was because of a 12-inch. 80s Ladies Turned On To You. And I was talking to him, and he goes, if you can get me 80s Ladies Turned On To You, I can get you this and that and the other. And then we kind of swapped. I had a list, he had a list. We'd swap lists and we got that friendship going all through the 80s, and it culminated in me DJing at High and Hope in Dingwalls after Frankie Fonset, the man Frankie. That's another story, which we'll get into. But yeah, I mean, those 80s were fantastic. All the people that were massive now, like Trevor Nelson, Norman, Danny D, MBE now. He, it was all from that shop, Bluebird Records.
Well, Pogwash, I was saying, he shouts out the Ealing Road Massive. Garage House TV says, giving a shout out to Wembley Massive. Clements comes in and says, love you, Ricky. How are you, Clements? Great memories from Soul Heaven with you, brother. And I'm just checking out, Delroy was referencing Nottingham Rock City as well. You would have been traveling up to.
He used to go up there. My God, Jonathan, when you're a DJ, right, and you're buying music, and you think you're the only one that knows about that record. And then when you hear a DJ play that record, you think, oh my God, what's going on here? He knows that record. How dare he know that record? And that's what it was like when we used to go to because we used to buy music, but we thought we were the shit. No one knew the music that we knew. But it ended up us having to go to places like Rock City with Jonathan, because Jonathan used to play. We were very influenced by American music, obviously, because as I said, there wasn't much of a British scene there, but we were really deep into New York, like what people call boogie, these days, and we were into some people called Boy Jarvis and Timmy Ridgersford. They were like instrumental in my journey, my vibe. And Jonathan, we went to Rock City, and Jonathan's playing all this stuff. He's playing Serious Intention, You Don't Know. He's playing Release the Tension by Circuit. He's playing Affinity, Don't Go, which are proper big New York records, which I grew up with, listening to people like Larry Levan and people like the Paradise Garage, So Jonathan's playing these records, and I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, there is life.
Okay, so I've got to ask you. You say you're listening to Levan at Paradise Garage. Are you talking about tapes, or you actually went there? I
went to the garage. Yeah, I went to all the clubs in New York. I was very lucky.
How? Why?
My friend, I had a friend called Gary Grant, right? Okay. And Nicky Kitson will know this, because if he's listening, he'll know. Back in the early 80s, my friend Gary was, he lived in Wembley also. He moved to New York to dance at a company called Alvin Ailey Dance Company, which is a very famous dance theatre company. Like Fame, You know, the dance, that kind of thing. So he was there, and we used to go Sunday school together, you know, church and stuff like that. So he moved to New York, and then I had cousins in New York, but we had an excuse. Me and my friend Nicky had an excuse to go to New York and hang out with him. And he goes to me, Rick, there's this place we got to go to. It's called the Garage. I went, okay, fine. You know, I was into like soul and funk and boogie and stuff. I went, okay, it's gay, but it's okay. It's not really that gay on a Friday, but Saturday it's quite gay, but we need to go. And I went, okay, fine, fair enough. Went down there now, shuffled in the alleyway, you know, paid the money, went into this little booth where it's like a sand kind of floor. And all these people are coming in with changes of bags, you know, like, you know, changing of clothes kind of thing. And I'm thinking, what the fuck? What's all this about? You know, and I'm hearing it. Open this curtain now, and this sound just comes right through me. And he's playing all sorts of records, but the selection was ridiculous. Every record meant something. You understand what I mean? Like he played two Puerto Ricans and a Dominican do it properly. Then he'd mix it into like Prince, If I Was Your Girlfriend, like a ballad. Do you understand what I mean? This was like the later time, but before he was playing like more New York, Boy Jarvis, Billy Nobody's Business, you know, that kind of stuff, you know, but not really. I wouldn't say it was the best mixer in the world, but the selection was absolutely flawless, you know, but the sound system was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. I mean, and I used to go there every year between like 83 to like about 86.
Okay.
But I was quite lucky enough. Me and Abby used to go to New York on a little pilgrimage, and I used to go to all the clubs in New York, like Zanzibar, went there, 1018, Choice, The Loft, Save the Robots with DJ Smash. That was a great club. Mars, like 5 floors. Went to the World to see Frankie Knuckles. I was quite lucky to go to New York in those times and actually listen to the DJs that are our peers in their home ground, and they play completely differently to what they play when they come over here. When they came over here, dare I say, they thought that we didn't know about music, but at that time,
so they watered it down a little bit.
Yeah, but as you know, around the 80s and early 90s, the UK became the centre of the dance community. We used to get everything, as you know, used to get techno, breakbeat, house, all things house, you know. So we had everything from all over the world, Japanese, you know, Japan, Germany, we had everything. So we would actually, all the DJs from back then was to play all records from that era, but all Americans only play American stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Completely.
So we were quite lucky to have encompassed so many different styles of music. So when the Americans came and started playing, we were thinking, well, we know all this stuff. Well, what's going on, you know? And then they wised up, obviously, and you know.
And by this time, did you get? So tell me about yourself. Had you made a name for yourself on the DJ circuit at this point?
Well, around that time, after being a computer engineer, it got to a point where I got quite frustrated musically. So I was buying records. We had a sound system. We're doing parties. I still wanted a bit more. And luckily, I got made redundant because I was told when I was a computer engineer, I was told to move to Birmingham or you're sacked. I said, all right, fuck off then. Sorry, excuse my French. So, no,
you can swear as much
as you want.
I
got made redundant. And at that time, I was a Saturday boy at Red Records, which Abby hired myself. On a Saturday, the Saturday boys at that shop, Red Records in Beak Street, was Abby, Seamus Haji, myself, Trevor Nelson, and Jeremy Newell.
Wow.
On a Saturday.
What a pedigree. What a pedigree.
Yeah. So what was happening, that shop Saturday, we were making ridiculous money for this guy. I mean, we were selling records like it's going out of fashion. We were like, you know, it was mad. And then what was happening was they were selling records, but nothing was coming back for us. So cut a long story short, I got made redundant. I had some money. Abby was frustrated. So he thought, you know what? Let's do our own record shop. So we found a place, and the person that was buying all the cutouts, a guy called David Drew, I think his name was, he came on board. So it was myself, Abby, Jeremy, and David Drew, and we made a Catch a Groove. And we painted the walls, we got the racks, we got the glass for the counter. And because David knew all the Americans there, we actually got a couple of American record companies and also the A&R people of that time that was running things. We actually got Guy to open up the record shop.
Right.
So Guy opened up the record shop, came in, it was packed, you know, and then from that moment on, it was just, and we were so innocent back then. I remember when we were selling records, we weren't selling records. It was just a continuous mix all day. So if someone wanted to hear a record, me and Jeremy would go, it's in the pile, it's coming. So it'd be like a little speakeasy in the shop, you know, every Saturday. People would hang out, and if you wanted a record, you put your hand up and people would have piles of records, you know, that they'd be buying at the end of the day. You know, the famous saying was, Jeremy's go, you need this, you need 2 of these to mix this and this. And, you know, it was fantastic. You know, we were very, very lucky back then because we knew so many people in the industry. It got to a point where we had certain producers sending us DATs to listen to the records and asking us our opinion and if we would sell any. There was one record in particular, which was Underground Solution. No, it was Michael Watford, Holding On. Mm-hmm. We had that DAT way before it came out, and we ordered 100 copies of that record for the store for when it came in. And I do remember this. A lot of other stores were going, 100 records? Who, what? But we knew the record was so big, and we sold 100 copies in a day. We had Aftershock. I remember Aftershock. Someone sent us a tape. A lady from Virgin sent us the mix
of what? Slave to the Vibe?
Yeah, we broke that record. We had the imports of Aftershock. I remember we had queues going around the block for this record because we had like the promos, US promos. I mean, I can tell you so many stories. Madness.
Well, people are already reminiscing about Chris Williams is here.
Oh, Chris! Wow, yeah.
And he's saying, I bought most of my collection from Catch a Groove.
Yeah, it was a great shop. And everyone passed through. Larry Levan came to that shop. Mm-hmm. Larry Levan passed through. Timmy Ridgersford passed through. Shep Pettibone passed through. Mariah Carey. All those, you know, it was madness. It was crazy. It was so innocent back then. You know, it was a wonderful, wonderful capsule of time, and I've got to thank Abby for those moments, and Jeremy as well.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about your DJ career at this point, running Tandem.
So basically, what was happening? The record shop was happening because of the record shop. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you get a lot of you know, it's who you know basically. So people buying records. Oh, if I buy records off you, maybe I can do a little set for you. But it was the other way around. They wanted me to come to play at their gigs because I had all the promos.
Okay.
But to the point where I was just playing slates all the time. So I'd be getting DATs and stuff. And just remember it now. It's just crazy time. So basically, my first kind of gig really was, I'll probably get a tongue lashing for this, but it was like Dance Wicked. There's a club called Dance Wicked at the Arch, and there's a little known sound system called Soul to Soul in the front room, and in the back room,
rings a bell.
Yeah, and in the back room was myself and CJ McIntosh as residents with Roger Johnson and Chris Forbes. This club was a proper warehouse club. We'd walk in, you'd hear EPMD, So What You're Saying, coming in, shaking the walls. That was the main room, and in the back room where there was like, we were up on the balcony, sweat dropping off the ceiling onto the records, that kind of thing, playing all the New Groove old stuff. Remember the records on New Groove, all that kind of stuff, all the
terribly pressed, terribly pressed,
the Italian stuff. Yeah, it was great. And then from then on, I was lucky enough to get a break I mean, I'm fast forwarding now. I'm just remembering things in my mind. Myself.
So it's off the back of the store, really. Then that you started
in record shops, basically, that I got, and also the sound, because my experience with the sound systems. I knew the records. I had all the records, and back then it was just selection. It wasn't about a style of house, a style of music. You was just playing different genres into, meshed up. You play a funk record mixed with a soul record, then an early house record or a boogie record, or because everything was just music to us, and right. It was all about programming. It wasn't about mixing. It was about what record follows the next. You find all the best DJs are from that world. Not the mixing. It's about the selection that's important.
The selection and the programming. I get you. But evening Pax. Let me say evening to Pax. Evening to Rich. Thank you for commenting, Rich. MCK, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that. He said earlier, the Ealing Road Massive, aka Alperton.
Alperton, that's right. That's on from Alperton, the Massive. Yeah, Newton Road. Wow.
There you go.
Oh my God.
Okay, so we got to Dance Wicked, and we were talking about Catch a Groove.
Yeah, Catch a Groove. So Dance Wicked was when I was working at Red Records with Abby and Jeremy and that. And then we moved to Catch a Groove. That was like 1990, I guess. But before that, if I remember rightly, I'm trying to remember how I met Frankie Fawcett. Frankie Fawcett was part of Black Market. But we used to hang out hard together. I mean, proper, like we're like thick as thieves, And I was lucky enough, like going back to New York, my friend from New York, Gary, he used to listen to WBLS and Kiss FM. And so every month I'd get a batch of tapes, like from WBLS and Kiss. Here's some now, look. There's a few of these. I used to get like these every month, like batches of tapes, like, 20, 30 tapes every month. And I'd go through them and listen to the records. And then I'd go into the record shop to ask for these records, and that's how I got the Saturday job at Red Records. Have you got this tune? Have you got this tune?
So they knew already. I'm sorry to cut you off. But I've just got to say a big shout out to Dean Savon joining us.
Oh, Dean! Wow,
Dean, do me a favour. Send me a message, Dean, because I need to get you on. Your name comes up so many times. We have to have a conversation.
Release the pressure.
Definitely. I had a great conversation. We're going to get onto this. I had a great conversation with Gary Dillon.
But anyway, Gary, my God.
Back to you, Ricky. Back to you.
All the skeletons in the closet, that guy. My goodness. Yeah. That was
okay. So Catch a Groove then.
Basically, I was to get these tapes from Gary, WBLS and stuff. And me and Frankie, when I was a computer engineer, used to sit in my car, a red Vauxhall Cavalier, and listen to these tapes. And listen to Timmy mixing, Tony mixing, all these. Oh, what's this record? Oh my God, I need to get it. Some of the records never came out, but some records would come like a year after. I remember a track by Burrell. I don't think they were, the Burrell brothers, New Groove. They got signed to Virgin. They did an album, and there's a track on there called I Really Like. Wicked track. And Timmy played this record, and it was beating me and Frankie up for a good year or so. And it eventually came out on a 12 about a year and a half later. That's how advanced they were. But, my schooling was from those tapes. Timmy Wetherspoon, John Robinson, Kenny Carpenter, Bobby Condors, Merlin Bob, all those cats. They were my teachers. I would listen to them, how to play records, how to mix records, like instrumentals into vocals, back into instrumentals, a cappellas, I was very, very fortunate back then. And also I was very lucky to obviously hear Tony at Zanzibar back in that era as well, at Zanzibar. I used to hear Dave Morales at his club, the Red Zone.
Red Zone.
Yeah. I used to hear Frankie Knuckles at The World. So I heard them in their own environment. So I was like a huge sponge taking it all in. And then I try and encompass all those styles into my style, which was basically quite American with a British twist, you know.
So in one very quick question I need to ask, because it just came into my mind, and then we'll skip past it. While you were working in the store in the 90s, were you ever selling tunes for like the rave kids, you know, like the acid house, the more tougher stuff? Because alternate and all that kind of sound was coming out at the same time.
That was in Red Records. I remember when French Kiss came in on Diamond Records. We were selling everything. We were selling like, oh my God, it was from like all 430 West stuff to like Don't Scandalize Mine to like Mantronics to like, we were selling everything. And each one of us had our own category, you know, like, you know, of specialists who knew music. But Abby was the man. He knew everything. He knew all the records, the master seller, you know, that we learnt a lot from him, you know. We were selling all types of records. Back in the 80s, it was everything, techno, all things. Well, you know, everything's categorized now. You got tech house, you got Afro.
But back then it was everything. And as you say, because it wasn't necessarily so much focus on the mixing, it was about the programming.
About the programming, but the genres of music was all. There was no genre. It was genreless. It was either house, or hip hop, or soul.
Yeah, you know? I hear that.
No fragmented kind of nonsense, you know, which is awful, you know. And it was back to the personality of the person behind the counter, which was selling the records, which enabled that person to buy that record. It's not like now where you got a one screen click, you know.
Yeah,
you understand what I mean?
Well, let's not reminisce.
It's more of a personal thing, you know, a personal thing, and you know, and you'd sell your personality through that
to the people. Well, I'm sure there are many people from up and down the country who would have been influenced by not only hearing the music that you would eventually get to play, but the music would have sold to them. So many influential characters in London. That names crop up again and again, you know, from being behind the counter. Marky Dice passes in, he says a shout out, as does J Marks. Good evening, guys.
Wow.
Okay, so let's skip into the mid-90s then. Or are there any major happenings around this time before the mid-90s? Because by this time your popularity is growing on the circuit.
Well, that time Catch a Groove was in full flight, and then it was really blowing up, and then through one reason or another, through mismanagement, not from myself or Abby, the higher up, we had to like call it a day and go to that shop in the sky. So we had to close the shop, and someone else took it over. And at that time, I was living in the shop, not in the shop. I had a flat
above the shop.
Yeah. And we had Bob and Steve on the top floor. I was in the middle floor, and Lyndon C was the floor above. So we had to shut the shop overnight, you know, because I don't know what, it's something went down. I won't get into it. But anyway, to cut long story short, I had all my stuff in that shop, my records, clothes, everything. I had to move everything out of that shop and move back to my mum's. And at that particular time, Fran Sidoli, the S in M&S, he was in the car game, and he had to leave the car game from his brother-in-law. So both of us, we grew up together, obviously. He lived in Sudbury, I lived in Wembley. We grew up, same, different sound systems, buying music together. But it got to a point where we were at this crossroads where we didn't have a pot to piss in, basically. And all we knew about was music. Then Fran came with an idea. He was making music. He had a little studio master desk, like a 16-track thing. Mm-hmm. And I had an MPC MPC 60, if I remember rightly, and a JD 800, Roland JD 800. And I remember this day, he drove his red Cavalier to the shop, took all my stuff in his car, drove back to my parents. And I remember him, well, let's try and make some tunes together. I went, yeah, why not? Got nothing else to do. You know, we're fucked. Let's see what we can do, you know. So I remember this, and I remember we walked up to this hill in Harrow on the Hill, and quite emotional actually. We were both sitting in the hill on top of this hill. It goes, right, are we going to do this? We went, yes. Okay, let's do this. And we said 50-50, and the contract was a handshake. So everything that we did was 50-50, all down to from 1993 until when Fran had to get out of the game around 2007. There was no paperwork. It's just everything that we did was 50-50. And I remember we went to his mum's house, went to his house. He had a little box room upstairs, a Studio Master desk, Atari ST, Juno 106, and yeah, that was it, just that setup. And I remember we made about 15 tracks, this is after category, about 15 tracks. And I went to New York and I sold them all. They came out on Cutting, they came out on Freeze, they came out on Strictly.
Was this all as M&S?
This was the first records came out as I was Too Dope Productions, and Fran was 411. If you look at a record we done on Freeze Records, that was one of the first ones we did. That was on Todd's label, Freeze. I think it was called Shoot the Juice EP. We were two separate companies. But then, and then the Cutting ones as well. We did a lot of stuff on Cutting, which was separate production. But then we formed our own company, M&S, when we started doing things like The Girl Next Door and all the punk stuff and all that, So
incredible. So break down who did what in the duo then.
Yeah, we were quite fortunate, as we were both quite musically involved. Fran used to do a lot of keys.
Okay.
And I used to do a lot of the drum programming, but it got to the point where we got so what's the word? When you think you know it all, yeah?
Competitive, arrogant.
We would have friendly competitions where I'll do the kick, I do the kick pattern, he do the snare pattern, I do the hi-hat pattern. Then we'd find a break for the sparkle, the shuffleness. So we'd all take turns in making the beats, and then Fran would come up with the chords. I've got to tell you this story about Justify. I remember on the phone, I can't remember who it was to. I think it might be to Danny D. And I came up with the bass line, we came up with the drums, and then I'm on the phone, and Fran's doing this digga 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 digga. I was going, that's the one, do that. And then we found this sound in the JD800. Like, well, let's try and make a sound that kind of gives you euphoric recall. Do you know what I mean by that? You're on a, something.
Yeah.
And we found this sound on the JD800, that sound. And Fran found that one. We put that in. Then we had the explosions, the boom, 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 and it just culminated in this whole mesh. And we thought, we've got to get this record done. And at that time, we were working at a PWL, the big studio, Pete Waterman Studios. And this is like going back, we were quite lucky to be working there because we did a couple of records with a guy called Andy Swallow, Public Demand.
Yeah.
He gave us our first break in a proper SSL studio. And that's what separated us from a lot of other people, because we were doing a lot of stuff on that desk.
Okay.
Like a proper desk. We had an engineer.
That makes a lot of sense then. You mentioned Andy Swallow. Shout out to Pax, who was just over in Tenerife at his new bar, actually. Wow.
Yeah, and, he got a lot of props. Give a lot of props to Andy. He gave us our first break. Gave us our
a legend. I am going to be talking to him at some point. Yeah. Also, we got Fever Soul passes through. Good evening, Matt. And then a young guy by the name rings a bell. Deli G.
Deli G from Bristol, yes. My man, how are you, Deli?
Big up, Deli. Okay, so you're making the tunes, 15 records over to New York City, New York, all sold.
All the records, and they came back as US imports. So everybody was saying, who are these guys? Who are these guys? They're from America. But we weren't. We were English. We were quite lucky to have all the records that we first did coming out on US labels. So we were very, very lucky there. And then it just went from one strength to another. And then it just came to a point where we were doing so many records, we got a lot of attention. And it got to a point where, we were doing some really good stuff. We were doing...
Actually, so the Andy Swallow connection, that would make a lot of sense with the J.L. LaRoof as well then.
Yeah, but all those records were... Because he had access to PWL Studios. Mm-hmm. And a guy called... I think, we used to call him Jungle Jim. Was it Jim Lowe? I can't remember his... Lovely guy. lovely guy. Props, to Jim. It was really... he gave us a lot of opportunities. So we had a lot of downtime. We used to go in the downtime at PW at like 3 o'clock in the morning to like 6 o'clock in the morning. So we used to go in the downtime and make all those records. But as we got better and better, and we got the trust of the people who are working at PWL, we'd get people to like a guy called Carl Twigg used to do he did the keyboards for J.L. LaRoof. That and that and that and that and that. Mm-hmm. Actually, no, it was Fran, but then Carl did some additional flavors and stuff like that, So we were doing all those records in that world at PWL, and then we made Justify in that world, and then we got a lot of attention to a point where a person called Danny D, who lived round the corner from Fran in Sudbury, Wembley, he was actually part of 19 management. Simon Fuller. Mm-hmm. So I remember he saw us making up some noise, and he goes, "Oh, I really like the stuff that you're playing, And then Fran said, well, "Why don't you manage us?" If I remember rightly, and it got to a point where Fran's sister used to work for One to One. Remember One to One back in the day?
I don't remember those.
One to One, Mercury One to One. You remember the phone?
Okay, the phones. Yeah.
Danny said, and Danny wanted a phone. He goes, "If you get me a phone, I'll manage you." The next day, Fran got his sister to get the phone, and that's how we got managed by Danny D.
Wow.
And then the rest was history. We were remixing alternate.
So you're going to have to forgive my ignorance. I'm not ashamed to say. You mentioned Danny D. Danny from D-Mob.
Danny D-Mob, yeah.
Yeah.
Who is now MBE.
Okay, I thought you meant D-Mob, but I didn't want to interrupt.
Yeah, Danny D, yeah. He lived in...
And so again, every now and again, I am going to say someone else who's coming on at some point, Lyndon C, passing through, saying hello.
C, yeah, Lyndon, my man. Yeah.
Lyndon, another part of the heritage. We got to talk, brother. It's going to happen.
Wow.
Okay, so do carry on, Ricky. Forgive me.
No. This was like after Catch a Groove, we're making music. I was still DJing, doing like Garage City and stuff like that. I got, High and Hope, traveling to Italy quite a lot because I was quite fortunate that a lot of friends that I used to know, a lot of people working at Catch a Groove, we were working all across the world, from Japan to Italy to Spain, and they used to like buy records from us to send it to them. But we created a lot of good relationships with DJs and promoters. Okay. So I was quite lucky, very lucky, because I was DJing. I was at Catch a Groove at the time. And, a lady came in, and she had a friend of hers called Claudio Coccoluto, and he came into the store, and he was buying up all the records, and then he asked me if I could go and DJ at one of his clubs called Angels of Love, which was like, this was like 91, 92, so that was quite good. And then obviously I became a resident of a club called Red Zone, which was basically the equivalent of Ministry of Sound in Italy, in Perugia, massive club. They had everybody there, and I was resident there for a while, which is quite cool. But I got a very good relationship with Italians, and my wife's Italian. So, but I used to go to Italy quite a lot, Japan quite a lot, through getting relationships from Catch a Groove, from there. So I was DJing quite a lot.
Well, you keep using this word lucky. You need to take that out. You got to take that out of your mouth. Because
come on. You have to be at the right place at the right time. If I wasn't at that record shop, You know,
but that had nothing. That had nothing to do with luck. That had to do with you being hardworking and knowledgeable.
Yeah, yes. But
yes.
most of it is who is you know, in this game it's who you know. If you don't know the right people, you're not going to get over properly.
You've got to be amiable. People have to like you. People have to want you to do well.
I guess, you know, it's quite, you know, that's a beautiful thing. Yeah, I mean, but
accept it. You know, you forged the path for yourself.
Yeah, it is still a great journey, and it's still lovely to meet people. I remember buying this record off you, or this record that you mixed touched my heart. And it's a beautiful thing, you know. Even like to this day, I've got a show on my soul with Brandon Block. You know, we grew up together. You know, he was from Wembley. We grew up together. He's got as you know, Brandon Block. He's a legend in himself. You know. And even to this day, you know, we even on our shows, it's like a buddy, it's like a chat show, because we're talking about all the times back in the day playing those kind of records that we love, you know. But we've digressed, haven't we? Well, I mean,
we were talking about how highly revered you were in Italy, and how you were traveling a lot. Catch a Groove had closed down. You're starting to make a lot of noise with the productions. Then at some point, the next step comes.
Yes, after the productions, me and Fran got really got our producing boots on, culminating in a couple of really big hits, big crossover hits. We did a couple of things, and then we got, if I remember rightly, we did a lot of stuff for Ministry of Sound, a lot of stuff back in this is like mid-90s, late 90s. And doing a lot of stuff with Ministry of Sound. We did Michelle Weeks. We actually formed a couple of groups, State of Mind. But we were doing so much stuff back then, to the point where actually, you know, we actually built our own studio from that. You know, we had our own studio. We actually tried to build a replica of PWL that we worked in, because PWL shut down. And we were like bouncing from one place to another. So we built a studio. I do remember another story. Oh my God. Yeah. After the success of Justify and The Girl Next Door, Strictly Rhythm, Gladys Pizarro, she invited us to New York. This is the important part, actually. She invited us to New York to write a track with Barbara Tucker. So we went to New York in 97 or something. It's about 97. And we wrote a track with Barbara Tucker. I remember us going into it's January. It was really, really cold. I remember Gladys coming in with these two dats. She goes, I like your opinion on these two records. And one was Lonnie Clark's Searching, and one was Alternate Free. And she played us these records, and we went, we like Lonnie Clark Searching, because Free was a bit too commercial for us, you know. She goes, I kind of like the guitar thing in Free. What do you think? You go, I think Lonnie Clark Searching's the one, you know. But she came in with those. She just finished mastered those records on that day. So that was quite a special moment for us. And look at Free now; it's like a huge hit, and we got to remix that.
I was going to say, you got to remix it, didn't you?
Remix that, yeah. So that was quite an important story, you know, very important story. And we were writing with Barbara Tucker, very, very. Yeah, we were lucky. I mean, come on, to be writing with Barbara Tucker.
I'm not having it.
We had Phil Pagano engineering our track, and Phil Pagano was the baddest engineer. He mixed all the master works, most of the stuff, with Dave Darlington. Phil Pagano, look him up. He's a bad man. He was an engineer. An engineer is a person who, you know.
Yeah. So that must have been before Barkin then. That must have been before Steve Barkin.
Before Barkin. Around that, they used to use Dave Darlington, Steve Barkin, and Phil Pagano. Phil Pagano was the man, rock guy, long hair, loved his trick, you know, his bits and pieces, and he was a bad man. You remember that?
Okay, so around this time as well would have been we would have already met by then. We would, you know, coming up to Birmingham and the likes, and then obviously we all went en masse with Bobby and Steve over to Miami,
97. My God, yeah. I mean, this is like, I mean, when I'm saying these stories, they're all coming to me, but they might be not in the right time frame. But I'm just trying to, you know.
Yeah. But I'm sure any of the real, I use the word a lot when I have these interviews, that any pivotal moments, you won't forget them. So the biggest records that you had for M&S on Strictly, I think, was Justify, Saturday, Deeper.
Well, that wasn't on Strictly. Justify was on Strictly. The Guy Next Door was on Strictly. Saturday was Public Demand.
Oh, okay.
Saturday was Public Demand. And I remember that distinctly because we did so many versions of that record, and some of them actually never saw the light of day because I can't remember what happened. It was such a big buzz about that tune. It was massive in I remember in New York, in Miami. I remember Louis played it twice in the what do you call it, the
Magic Sessions.
Magic Sessions. That was incredible. I remember me and Fran almost had tears to our eyes, like, oh my God, we played it twice. And as you probably know, that record is basically influenced by Master at Work, Freedom, you know, the bass line and stuff like that. And, you know, that's when we met. That's another story about the Michelle.
Well, listen, someone who is loving the stories. Abby Shah says
Abby,
hi.
Yes, Abby, I'm so happy you joined, Abby. Please try and send some text to Andy of some of the capsules that, you know, I'm not remembering. Because me and Abby, we had so much fun going to New York. I mean, I've got to tell you this story. Now, this one right here.
Keep them rolling. Keep them rolling. Just remember your daughter. Just remember your daughter's got to get to bed at some point.
Right. This story here. So, me and Abby, we go to America and we go to a place called Moving Records. Moving Records, as you know, was run by a lady called Abigail Adams and had a label called Moving Records. So we go to Moving Records now. This is in New Jersey. We go into the shop, all the cutouts are there, all the New York stuff's all there, you know. And we're chatting, and we're going. And Abby would say the same thing as me. Back in the day, Boy Jarvis was our idol. Boy Jarvis is a keyboard player, producer. Used to do stuff with Timmy Ridgersford from way back in the day, but he was the baddest keyboard player soloist ever in the 80s. He's passed away. The rest is old.
There's arguments that he was one of the very first ever house records.
I mean, he did Visual, The Music Got Me, which is one of the first what we would call house records in the 80s. What people call house, it was called boogie. You know, Boy Jarvis. Those two guys were instrumental in my career and inspirational with Abby as well. So we're in Moving Records now. And Abby's talking to us, and I don't know how it came to, but we started talking about Boyd Jarvis. She picks up the phone. Hi, Boyd. We've got a couple of guys from New York, from London would like to meet you. No problem. We go to this club called The Tunnel, which is a huge, massive club in a tunnel, like a railway tunnel. I think Timmy Ridgersford was playing there at the time, and Shaka Khan was performing there the week after. Boyd comes in, and there's me, Abby, and Boyd on a chair talking to him. Like, you know, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is Boyd Jarvis.
Fanboy moment.
Going to his house, sitting down, breaking bread with him, Boyd Jarvis. I mean, like, it was just amazing. I mean, and, you know, Abby, and we met, obviously, Kevin Hedge, Joss Milan, Kevin Herbert, who was Blaze, you know. I mean, it was just, to meet your idol like that, it's like, you know, I've no words, you know. I'm sure Abby will tell you. I mean, we were both shitting ourselves when we met him, you know. It was great. It was fantastic.
It's great. It's great to hear. It's lovely to hear. I completely resonate with all of those tales because I mentioned about Miami. I'd also get to meet people like that who I was completely in awe of.
Yeah.
You know, it's incredible.
Incredible times in those 80s.
Mm-hmm. So let's skip forward towards the back end of the, I guess the mid to back end of the 90s, while the steam train is rolling along for you guys.
Steam train's rolling. We're really going on all cylinders. Everything's rocking. We started going down the pop route because we were managed by 19, Simon Fuller. So we were actually doing stuff for the Spice Girls and Annie Lennox and stuff like that. It just got to a point there where we got really, really frustrated there. And it culminated. There's another story as well. It culminated in, I'm just remembering now, my God. Another story. So we're doing all these records and we are M&S. So we are M&S, we're doing our thing. It's all blowing up out of proportion. Everything's great. But 19 management wanted something a bit more poppy. And I remember as a joke, we sampled the Tramps. What was it called? Disco Inferno, the Tramps. And we remixed, I think, what's the group's name? Baby Bump, Sean Casey, I think his name was. And we remixed this record, but it was so poppy, it wasn't M&S. If we put that out as M&S, we'd get lynched. We'd get absolutely lynched. Like, that's it. They've sold out.
Yeah, the cred's gone.
So we had to go under a pseudonym.
Okay.
But at that time, obviously, we grew up with Brandon Block. Brandon was the king of Ibiza. He was going through a really crazy time at that time. And we thought, you know what we could do is we could produce this record, but we could use Brandon to front it because Brandon's of that pop ilk.
I forgot all about this. Yeah.
So then we created Blockster. When me and Fran were producing and Brandon was the front man. And that culminated in us doing that remix, Disco Inferno. And we thought, you know what? Let's just go hell for leather. Let's sample the Bee Gees. You should be dancing. So we sampled the Bee Gees, made a record. It was blowing up. I mean, ridiculous. It was just going completely nuts. And then it got to the point where we had to get it recreated, and we had to use one of our vocalists, a guy called Daniel Thomas. He used to be with the London Community Gospel Choir. He had to front it, Blockster, and that got to number 3 in the pop charts.
Wow, I'd completely forgot all about that.
We were Blockster. We were, as a joke, you know, as a you know, it's just a joke, like, you know, but it blew up. It just went completely nuts. And then we started doing the steps. We were remixing the steps and all that stuff. So we tried to do something different, and we ended up drawn into that road, and we made a lot of money from that. Yeah, I remember that. That was ridiculous. It was crazy. But
insane amounts of money. So, I mean, it may be a little bit personal, but I'll ask the question. You can give me as much or as little information as you want. When you were doing those remixes, what kind of money was banding about?
Yeah, it was good papers. Good. It was decent papers. It was, I can't say, but it was good amount of money. It's a proper dough, proper.
4 figures?
What?
5 figures, 5 figures.
Yeah, it's around that time. Yeah.
Crazy.
It was crazy. But then you barter. You go, it's either this money.
Well, actually, no, I've been told not to use the word crazy. I've been told to use the word interesting.
Yeah, because they just wanted a brand. They wasn't about the records. It wasn't about the remixes. They wanted the brand. And me and Fran were like fire back then. When we were doing Blockster and stuff, they just wanted your name on the label.
How did you get to that? How did it get to that point? Then clearly you're very talented. You're bringing a lot of quality to the table. But what was the engine behind you? How were they elevating you to that must-have status?
Well, I think it was because of management.
Yeah, but what was the secret?
That we were doing was blowing up. All the remixes that we were doing was really doing really well in the way they wanted it to. They wanted a dance mix. We were doing dance mixes, and they were blowing up. I mean, we did Michelle Weeks.
This is
Moment of My Life. We'd remix that.
Okay.
Blew up. Colonel Abraham's You're the One for Me. Yo Yo Honey. All those kind of records. You know, we were quite. You know, we did a Charlotte Skin. oh my God, Kim English, so many records that we were doing, but we were quite lucky.
They were all underground records.
Yeah, but we had that little twist to get it crossed over, so it wasn't too serious, but it had a little ticker tape stuff to get it over, you know, and it also sounded good. That was the most important thing. A lot of those records, they had to sound great, and because we were working out of a wicked SSL studio, our sound was, I've got to say, different sort of other producers' sounds.
And you could hear that. You could hear that.
When you listen to, like CJ McIntosh, he was working out of a desk, an SSL desk. Myself, you had people like, oh my God, you can tell all the Steve Mack and people like that. They're working out of big studios. Not like your little 16-track, 8-track kind of thing. We were making big records, for big clubs, big rooms. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely.
We were very, we were really doing a lot of damage on that side, and we were doing it the old school way. We'd go in with the drum machine, we'd lay the track on the 24-track SSL, then we'd go away, have a funny cigarette, couple of chicken and stuff like that, and leave Tim, who was our engineer, to balance it up. And then we'd go in and do the punches. And then after the punches, we'd get the DATs with like all the mixes. This is like every single mix we do, just to process, we'd have the instrumental, the a cappella, just the bass, and then we'd go to a guy and do edits of the track. So the mix that we did on the actual day wouldn't necessarily be the mix that came out, and that's what we go that was the American route. You'd actually do the mix, then you do edits of that mix.
Okay.
So it was quite tiring at times, but worth it. I mean, Justify was like about, I'm not gonna lie, that must have been about 400 edits.
No way.
Yeah, because what was happening then, when we were going into the studio on downtime, and we had the MPC synced up to the tape machine, but what was happening, the drum machine kept on going out of sync. The drums would go out of the music on the tape. So we'd have to mix 3 minutes of a record, put it to that, 3 minutes of a record, put it to that. And we used to do different sections. And then we'd go to a friend of ours called Paul. We used to call him the Wolfman, Morris, because he used to fix things up after a mess, the Wolf, Pulp Fiction. Yeah. So he used to come in and do all these edits, and all those mixes from Justify were just all edits, all like chunks to make a 9-minute mix.
9 minutes of heaven as well.
Baseline,
9 minutes of absolute heaven. So all through this time, still continuing to find the time to travel. You must have taken your foot off the DJ gas while all this money was rolling in the studios
as well. I mean, Fran, I kept on asking Fran, we need to do an M&S thing together, and he was a wicked DJ, but he was so far. He's almost like a father figure to me, because everything that happened to him happened to me about 5 years later or 10 years later, getting married, having a kid. He was the wise man of us. He was the all visionary. He was the one that got convinced me to do other records, other different styles, because I was very in my world. I want to do this kind of music, and that was it. American style music, American house, American funk, American-ish, American.
Yeah.
And then Fran was going, well, let's look at the bigger picture. Let's try and do this. And when we did Michelle Weeks, this moment of my life, they asked us to write another single with Michelle Weeks called "Don't Give Up," and I was going, nah, we ain't doing that. We're keeping ours. No. Fran's going, no, we've got to do it. And because of that, it got us to do other different styles of records and different type work with other producers. But I was too purist at the time. But Fran saw the bigger picture, and he had the business head. I was just the guy flying around like a nutter DJing, you know, and he was like the guy in the background making sure everything was airtight, you know.
The sensible one. Yeah. I love to hear that. I love to hear that. So the momentum is building and building.
Everything's blowing up. You know, everything's doing really, really well, making good papers. We had our own studio, working, writing with Kathy Dennis, you know, all those kind of people. And as I said, it just got to a point where we were just making these records and they were going to a big pot in Simon Fuller's pot. And if he was in a good mood, he'd choose one of our records and it would go on the S Club 7 album, or it would go, you know, but we weren't getting any love. No love at all. And we're making all these records and getting frustrated. And we stopped making remixing. We were just producing and writing, you know, writing plots for albums and stuff like that. And I remember we got so frustrated that we had some records in the studio, and one of those records was Sound of One, I Know a Place. And I remember the original samples by Double Exposure, Everyman. And I remember we were so disheartened with the whole scene that we thought we'd just try and make a record of ourselves that we love, but just for me to DJ, just to get our rocks off. And it was Double Exposure, Everyman. It had two samples. One was the instrumental, like ding 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 ding, and the other one was If You Wanna da 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 da. So we had three samples in the MPC. I remember we put it on tape. I went on holiday. Fran went on holiday. 2 weeks away, but that loop was just going on in my mind, and Fran's mind as well. Then when we came back, Fran started kicking it around, I started kicking it around, and it just got to the point we were listening to this loop. I'm not lying, Andy. We were in the studio and we listened to that loop, I think, for about 6 hours, non-stop, just listening, just doing. It's a ridiculous loop, you know, and we're going, oh my God. Oh, this is fantastic. This is fantastic. And then we found, well, let's make it pop. So we got the hook. If you wanna da 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 da. So we had like three samples made into one record, and we did it as a prop thing. We said we have to make sure that every 8 bars something changes to make it more interesting. So 8 bars was instrumental, 8 bars with the vocal loop, 8 bars back to instrumental.
Okay, so you're responsible for the short attention span of everybody nowadays.
Maybe, yeah, you know, maybe, yeah. But, you know, and we loved the record. And we were signed to Ministry at the time. This is a very good story, actually. So we did the record. And we went down to Ministry with this track thinking, oh my God, yes, come on, Rick, oh, we're good, put it out, da 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 da. The guy responsible, the A&R person at Ministry goes, Rick, I can't hear it. I can't hear it. I don't know what's going on here. You know, I don't understand this record. I'll give you $5,000 for it. Me and Fran went, yeah, okay, fine, fuck off. Went out, driving the car like this, going, what's wrong with this geezer? He's fucking, you know, what? Dick, you know.
Do you think he was playing you, or he just genuinely didn't feel it?
Because we knew the record was a hit. That's why we called it the Salsoul Nugget. We knew it was a big record. And so we're driving back to the studio thinking, this fucking guy, you know, he goes, you know what? We'll do it ourselves. So we pressed the record ourselves, and I had a list of 50 DJs. We gave it to those DJs, and the rest is history. It just blew up. I mean, ridiculous, to the point where it got...
So this is 1999, right?
1999. So we just come out of the management thing with Simon Fuller, and we're trying to, you know, get ourselves going again, get our juices back, you know, back into the world of clubbing and stuff like that. And then in Clubland, And we did the record, pressed it ourselves. It just blew up. It got bootlegged, got 10,000 bootlegs, and our friend Andy found the geezer, shut him down, properly shut him down. I remember that, properly. Yeah, shut him down. So you had no computer, nothing, and they got the money back from what they sold, you know. And then it starts getting the attention of the bigwigs, you know. So, and it got to a point where all the record labels were sniffing around, and it got to a point where me and Fran were in the studio, had a bottle of Jack Daniels in the studio, and we're drinking because we knew Pete Tong was going to play the record. And Pete Tong at that time was God. I mean, anything that he touched or said was influential, and people used to go and buy his word. So he did a competition. If you can tell what the lyrics are to this record, you win a ticket to go to bloody Cream or something like that. So he was testing the water if the people knew the record. So, and we're on the and we're like this, going, "Oh my God, Jesus, oh, you know, oh my God, you know." So he plays the record, and we're listening on radio. Yes, that's right, Shirley from Basingstoke. That's right, that's the record. Well done, you won this. Then we get the phone call from Phil Faversham, who used to work at FFRR, and this time there was Sony after us. There was so many people after us, but FFRR wanted this record so badly. And he said to me on speakerphone, he goes, "Rick, there's 50 grand records and there's no records. This is one of those records. Let me know." Put the phone down. Me and Fran went, "I'm buying a house, you're buying this, we're doing that." And so, and the deal was done from that phone call. And it just went on from there. Then we had to do all the logistics. We had to write a song over the top. We had to do all the to make it more pop. And that's how we found Natasha Bryce. Natasha was, she was an actress at the time, model. She was an actress in the Bruce Willis film. What was the film?
He had a few.
There was one, he was, and they were on a plane, and what's his name was in it? The guy that was in with Jackie Chan, he was in there as well in the film.
I have no idea.
Anyway, she was the air hostess, and we found her and her cousin. I think she was part of the a gospel group, and we got her to front it and sing the song. And we wrote the song, and it just got to number 6 in the pop charts. And it was just like, you know, Miami, this, that, and the other. It was great.
Because I do remember there was the buzz around the lads, you know, but oh my God, there's a bidding war going on. And they've paid so much money for this.
Pampered left and right. Everyone wanted that record. It was such a great feeling. And me and Fran were like this, you know. And it got to the point. And I remember one time before it was blowing up, we knew it was gonna blow up when we went to a club called The Crypt in Brixton, and Frankie Knuckles was playing there, and he played it 3 times in a row. Not in a row, but 3 times all through the night. And that's when we knew it was gonna go. And those records that got from 1 to 5 were all bona fide record label machine records. You had Shaggy, you had Boys Town Gang or something, and all these other records that were proper in the machine, in the system, guaranteed top 10 records. And ours was this little dance record with a hook, a little, you know, shimmy, you know, and we got to number 6. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. That was, you know.
And that was a bigger achievement for you than your number 3 for Blockster.
Yeah, because it was me and Fran's own idea, own concept. We wrote the song. You know, that was a beautiful thing. And then it got to the point where we started writing records for other people. We were going to do an album and stuff like that.
Well, I've wrote down here album. I don't recall an album ever materializing.
Well, what happened was, because it's like any remixer. If you look at Morales, for example, he did so many remixes. When he did the album, all your ideas from the remixes were the best ones. So when he did an album, it didn't sound as good as all the remixes. And me and Fran had so much, we were so proud of ourselves. We wanted to make sure the album was the best. So it just got to a point where we got really frustrated and got into a loop where we couldn't find any new ideas for the album. We were writing, I mean, I've got a whole hard drive full of stuff that that never came out from different people, different vocals and stuff, but we just thought we weren't good enough. We just
analysis paralysis,
a high level, you know, of we wanted it such a high level that we never actually culminated in getting an album together. And because we were remixing with so many different labels, we couldn't even do like a best of, like what Masters at Work did, where they had like volume 1, volume 2, volume 3, because there's so much politics involved that we actually, you know, couldn't get it across the line. But, you know, never say never. Hopefully, you know, hopefully it might be someone. Actually, as you probably know now, licensing records is quite cheap now. So you might be able to license some of the mixes that we did and culminate it into
a compilation. Wonderful. Okay, so the big time is hit. You're not going to tell us what the advance was.
It was good. It was good papers.
So you're not going to tell us.
I'm not telling you. I can't tell you that.
I know. I wouldn't ask, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask. I wouldn't expect you to tell me.
It was very healthy.
Did you buy the house?
Yes.
Fantastic. Congratulations.
And Fran as well.
Wonderful. I love that.
It was contribute. Yeah, it's a big contribution. Yeah. So, you know, it's a beautiful thing. And also, because of that record, I don't think the logistics behind that record, it was a sample. And if it's a sample in the game, you get no publishing. The publishing goes to the person who actually wrote the actual record. And I remember flying to New York and meeting the guy, the head of Salsoul Records, and broke bread with him, a guy called Glenn LaRusso. He looked like Barry Gibb. He had false white teeth. You know, he's going, "Hey, Ricky, how are you? I love the record." And he stung us to license. We got a bit of publishing, but he stung us for licensing the record. The reason why we did that record was because M&S held the license for Salsoul Records. So they basically farmed out the Salsoul catalogue to producers to make the records because they owned the license for 3 years. That's why
you said M&S. I don't think you meant to say M&S.
What do you mean?
Who owned the license to the records?
Ministry of Sound. Sorry,
Ministry of Sound. Oh, sorry.
MOS. They own the license. So every 3 years back in the day, Salsoul would give the permission for record labels to exploit their records.
Okay.
Ministry of Sound had it for 3 years. So you could sample any record from Salsoul and they would pay you for that mix. And because they held a license, they get the money. That's why we did the record, because we were working for
Ministry.
So they didn't bite, the A&R Ministry. So full circle now, the record's coming out on FFRR. You know, I had to go to New York to Salsoul Record to broker the deal to make sure we get some piece of it, you know, a percentage of the publishing. But we wrote the song as well, but with a piece of the action of the music as well, you know. And so I done that. Remember going to Salsoul Records, they had all the original 2 inches of all the records back from Salsoul, First Choice, Double Cross, all of them. I got a couple to take home. This sounds a bit sick, but he still had the hot pants from the girl.
Who created the albums.
I don't know if you know, on Salsoul, there's this beautiful brunette with the T-shirt, and there's a couple of albums where they had the red hot pants. He had them in a drawer with the T-shirt. you know, I don't know. I didn't even look at it whether it's soil or anything like that. He was the original. I remember going in the back, and he had all the reels, all the cassettes, all the memorabilia. You know, it was fantastic. You know, that was a beautiful moment, actually.
Would you say it was the pinnacle of?
Yeah, that was the culmination of a lot of hard work and a lot of luck. I've got to say, it was very, very.
I'm not having it.
Yeah, it was. It was a beautiful thing.
Beautiful. Well, Sal is saying your latest cover of The System, Don't Disturb This Groove, is one of the best, most mature productions so far. The best is yet to come.
Oh my God! Well, that again. The System, they were out back in the day when I was in the sound system days with Joe and Huey and Dee and that. We called ourselves a System because we loved the records by the System. David, Frank, and Mick Murphy. We were heavily influenced by them. You know, You're in My System, Passion. You know, all those records from back in that day, because they're, you know, we loved them, and we called ourselves the System Beatbox.
Sorry, it's Mr. Newell commented.
Jeremy,
fucking pseudonym.
Jeremy, there you go.
Easy, brother. Wow. Sorry, I didn't clock my man.
Jeremy, I remember Jeremy. I mean, there's a story with him. Oh my God, that was he was so hungry, so passionate. Me and Abby were working. We were at Red Records on a Saturday, and this little guy comes in. Remember, we had Jerry curled, I think. He's all Jerry curled, and he comes in all, you know, I'd like to work for, you know, I'm very da-da-da-da. And you know, we brought, because of his eagerness, we brought him in, and he was like a huge, massive sponge. I mean, he took everything in, you know, to the point now he is the go-to guy for anything, for all things Salsoul. And actually all things reggae now, because he's into reggae. Is that right, Jeremy? You're a big reggae man.
Big reggae Don. He's getting now he's revealed himself. Everyone's giving him praise and props, you know. And he's cussing you. He's saying you were the one with the Jerry curls.
Yeah, I had the Jerry curls and the dark glasses. You know when you used to sit on the sofa, I used to go away from the sofa and leave a stain on the
like Coming to America.
I was that guy. Yeah, I was that guy.
Okay, so listen, we are an hour and a half into this. When we were speaking earlier, you said, wow, you know, Andy, I've probably got 90 minutes or so. Bearing in mind, we're only still in the year 2000 yet. So we've got to roll this. We've got to roll this along. We've still got some to get through.
So, yeah, I mean, well, what else do you want to know? I mean, there's so many stories.
That was 23 years ago. We need to get more of. So you had the highs of being, you know, the pop stardom. You're still DJing. Is there any point where the and I know the answer to this, where the shine starts to fade and you start to get disillusioned with it all?
Yeah. MP3s. Simple as that. The filters had gone. Do you understand what I mean by the filter? It was like all you can eat.
The entry level was too low now.
The level was too low. And technology changed a lot of stuff. DJing was an art form. Unfortunately, it's not that anymore. It's not an art form. It used to be, when you was DJing back in the day, people would go to listen to you, listen to your style, listen to your presentation. Whereas, unfortunately, now that's not the case. It's how many numbers you got on Insta or it's an event now rather than like
an experience,
you know, journey, you know. And also with all the DJs, all bums on seats, 50 DJs in 8 hours, you know, whereas back in the day I'd have one DJ playing all night from start to finish, you know. And unfortunately that's the nature of the beast, because of technology and because of the ease, the way people consume music now is different. You know, it's not
as cherished. It's not as cherished. But possibly, I think possibly, I 100% agree with you on what you're saying. Yet, being the devil's advocate, which is a phrase that many people really dislike, maybe we don't see it from the point of view that other people see it, you know.
Agreed. But we were there from the beginning. But there might be people before us that would have the same thoughts, you know, because I remember people playing records, playing cassettes. Walter Gibbons was playing cassettes. He was mixing cassettes. And back in the day, there was DJs that were mixing records from the grooves with no headphones, you know. So, you know, it all, you know.
It all moves forward.
I've got to say, with the digital technology, when that came out, that really did change the game completely.
Okay, so let me roll you back then and try and be a bit more specific. So with the advent of the MP3, with the advent of social...
The vinyl, then it became CDs. But with the CDs, you had a little bit of artistry. You could go there, you know, playing CDs. You just had less stuff to carry. But, you know, you still had those records. So there was a thing between, there was a situation between vinyls and CDs. You're playing both at the same time. Then the CDs took over. And then I remember the time when the Pioneer came up with the CD player, and I say with that dreaded sync button. That's when it all, for me, when, you know what, the game's up, you know, everyone's going to be, you know, and listen, it's technology. I'm not against the sync, but I don't use a sync button. I would never use a sync button because the way I play music doesn't generally want you to have that sync button. But there might be entertainers with the hot cues and stuff like that. That's fantastic. It's a new era, you know. But when that came, I knew there were, and also when you were buying records, Track Source and all the other mediums, you know, you'd have these, you'd have people buying the records on those sites had no say. It's the people behind the scenes telling you what this record is. It's a house record. It's a soul record. It's a tribal. It's a whatever genres they had back then when they first started. You know, one person telling you what that record was. So you had no clue. So you were so you're going into the house section, you're buying house, but there's so many other records that you could have been turned on to. Do you understand what I mean? Yeah. And that's when it all started getting weird. Tech house, Afro house.
Okay, so let's not lament the way that the scene went. What I'm
trying to say was that when the digital thing came in and the way you consume records, when that started to happen, that's when I got a little bit disheartened with it all.
So you can pinpoint that as being a major part of you losing.
When the digital age came in, when the MP3s came in.
And was there ever a time when it was your decision to step back, or did the work start to slow down for you naturally?
Well, also, like anything, the work did slow down. Any DJ that played records, you can't deny that it did slow down because a lot of new people were coming in, which is good, and a lot of new blood was coming in, and their schooling was MP3s and CDJs. It wasn't vinyl or SL12s. So they were coming in, and their energy and their attention span was a lot smaller than ours.
So they didn't have the patience. You couldn't forge a good set.
Yeah.
You know, use the word journey.
Yeah. So instead of you playing a record till the end, which is what you're meant to do with records, they have a story, they have a middle, and they have an ending. That's important when you're playing records. You play those records. It got to the point where a lot of the records being played, instead of it being like a 9-minute, 11-minute long ass record, it became like 5 minutes, all manufactured for the DJ to play the intro. Not even that now. It's just straight in. It's just whack, you know. But that's the way people get with music now, you know. That's how they listen to it. You know, I remember back in the day when you used to do a 7-inch, had to be 3 minutes 20. I'm seeing on Spotify 1 minute 45 for a single. What's all that about? That doesn't make sense.
The frustration is real.
Yeah,
Mark Russell's passing through, giving you some love.
Yes, Mark. He built our studio. Yeah. Wow.
God. Legendary. Okay, so
basically the digital technology made me a bit disheartened and made me not really get into it properly. You know, that was like between maybe I think it may have been like mid 2000s. Then Fran had some family situations to deal with, so he went out the game like about 2007 or 8, I believe, something like that. And then I was in no man's land for a few years, just like, ducking and diving, doing this and the other. And then
living off the fat paychecks.
Then the wife put a rocket up my ass and said, "Go on, let's get going." And then I've got my own studio, because when we finished with the studio, we built a studio each in our house. So Fran had an exact replica of a studio, and I had the same. So we would be actually sending. That's what was happening. We were sending files over, and hiding things up, sending it back. Whereas before, we used to see each other every single day from like 2004 to 1994 to like about 2007. We'd see each other nearly every day. I go weekends, maybe we'd shut down Mondays, but between Tuesday and Friday, we'd be seeing it. We're like
religiously. Perfect.
And,
so using no man's land, and then the fire was put back up your ass. By this time as well, I do, we had you over to Spain a few times, but what were you doing then for a few years?
Yeah, that was when Rebecca was born. Rebecca came over to that. She was born in 2010, and we came over in 2011.
Yeah.
That was carnage. Remember that weekend?
Well, the first year was carnage, and then the next year was like, I'm bringing family with me next year.
All good. Vocal booth was, and again, that's like pain. That's like you being frustrated. I'll do my own thing and bring my own people and create my own vibe, and look at you now, like 15, 20 years later down the line, you're still going at it. It's a beautiful thing, Andy. You're giving something back. It's beautiful.
It is it's a great community. So thank you for saying. So like I say, I'm conscious. I'm keeping my eye on the time.
Yeah. What would you like to hear now? What?
I want to know where the energy came back, because I know in recent years, even before lockdown, you were back with like, as you say, a fire lit under you, teaming back up with Brandon. Where was the momentum building for the new wave of Ricky, so to speak?
Basically, this was what, 2013 or something, I guess. I was in no man's, and then what happened was I got someone presented an opportunity for me to get back on the horse and start making some records and producing some records. U.S Media, I think the label was called. And we did some stuff with Kathy Brown, Michael Watford and stuff. And it got me back into the game kind of thing. And then I met a guy called, me and Fran met a guy called Brian Lucas in 2007. And we did a track for him through Mr. Mike from Switzerland called Wait for the Sun or something. In full circle, me and Brian got back together again and started writing stuff. And after that period, when I was doing that records for U.S Media, I started doing stuff with Brian Lucas, which culminated, with a lot of stuff in the bag, in the folder. I was sitting on it because I didn't feel it was good enough. Myself, I had very high expectations. And then, to cut long story short, moving forward around to like about 5-6 years ago, before COVID kicked in, just as COVID kicked in, I gave some stuff to Spen, and he went into one about all the stuff that I did, and he wanted one of those records in particular called Uplifted, which we did 5 years before. I did 5 years before with Brian, and that culminated in that. So this was like when was it?
I can't even
2020, I think. Uplifted was. But before then, it was like stuff on Universe Media. We did some stuff. I mean, it was, and also with technology, you know, I got back into it.
Well, I remember Universe Media because Timmy Vegas was releasing tracks. He released Another Dimension on that label. That they were vying for a big pop chart hit, and it never came.
Yeah.
So that I remember Universe Media.
Yeah, that was a good label. Did quite a lot of stuff. Quite a few bits actually, yeah. But that fell by the wayside, and then
so we're talking about the release with Spen, and then we got Lockdown,
and then and no, well, also during that time, I went to Norman Jay's 60th birthday party, if I remember rightly, and Gordon Mack was there, who owns My Soul, Kiss FM, the Don, you know. And he was trying to get Brandon to do a radio show on My Soul. And Brandon said, I'll only do it if Ricky does it with me. So I remember going to Norman's party and Gordon was there. He goes, oh, she could do a show with Brandon. You know, I went, okay, fine, you know, for whatever. You know, it was a Wednesday night, 7 to 9, once a month. Play what you want. And it was a really good excuse to actually go back in that record stack and play records that you love from back in that time. And it was a beautiful thing. And it just culminated into like once a month to twice a month. And now we're doing a show every week on My Soul called the Musical Emporium, where we're just playing records that we love. And it's, you know, it's like me in your living room, me and Brandon in your living room, just having a chat about. Do you remember that time when we did this and people loved the concept, you know? But that's given me a lot of juice and Brandon a lot of juice to actually not reinvigorate ourselves, you know, because you get a chance to play records that you wouldn't necessarily like to play in a DJ set.
Yeah,
you playing all our funk stuff or off-key stuff if we wanted to, you know. So that's kind of put a rock up my arse as well to get back on the...
Are you involved with any major events out there? Because you know you hear a lot of things, and sometimes I get things twisted when I read them. I know you've played at a lot of events, but you're not involved with promoting any festivals or anything like that?
Well, I did promote me and my business partner of that vibe. We actually promoted, we did a thing called A Night in Paradise. We did two big, massive things where myself and Adam Newsom, we had such a big love for the Paradise Garage, the Shelter, all those clubs from back in the day, which we were heavily influenced by. We thought, you know what, let's do a couple of parties and bring all those DJs together from that world. And we hired out Ministry of Sound, and we had people like the original DJs from Paradise Garage, Joey Lanos, David DePino. We had D-Train performing, Christine Wiltshire, who sang Weekend, performing, Jellybean Benitez DJing, Dave Morales DJing, Victor Azardo DJing. It's a really two beautiful events. Then we did one, a Larry Levan birthday celebration at Ministry of Sound. So we were doing that, and then we got an offshoot called Boom, where we were doing a lot of stuff all from like 90s house and disco and beyond, you know. So we were doing that in that period as well, 2014. But we did it quite uniquely, where we would hire a space and it'd be free.
That was what was in the back of my mind, yeah.
And we just invited people, that not the Paradise Garage ones, but the Boom ones. We'd have special locations, special venues where we'd invite people and just have a party, just giving something back, you know.
Nice. I get that. In the whole of this conversation, we've skipped so many names. Well, we haven't skipped any names. It's just that we didn't have the opportunity to mention them along the way. A lot of our peers, a lot of our good friends that we've lost that you know we remember, and I didn't want to have this conversation today without giving a mention to Jason Kay, who we lost a few days ago as well. You know,
so many people that have, you know, I mean, if we want to talk about that, I mean, you got to talk about one of the the biggest influence in my whole life, which was Mr. Paul Anderson. You know, when he passed away, that was just shocking. And he was a major part of me, big part, big. He was the trunk of the tree. I used to go and hear him play at Electric Ballroom in the 80s, Crackers, you know, and he was a one-off. I gotta say it, he was a one-off. He'd mix funk, soul, jazz, hip-hop, all beautifully, you know, and natural, you know. And no schooling, what, just a raw talent. And he was the guy that was playing records that I thought, and all my guys from the system thought they would never, he wouldn't, you know, we're the only ones that know those records.
You'd never hear it again.
One after the other. Lee Prentice, Love This Way. And he broke, I remember seeing him breaking. He's such an institution, you know, and a very, very sad loss, very sad loss. He broke so ahead of his time. He had everything. He was a dancer, wicked dancer, DJ, a poet, everything. He was just encapsulated everything, you know. Big, heavy loss. I really felt that for a long, still to this day, still think of him to this day. But he was like an innovator, breaking. I remember when he played Soul Sonic Force. Do you remember that record, Planet Rock? When that came out, that was like playing Elvis Costello in the Albert Hall when someone's playing Beethoven. It's that kind of record. You think, why are you playing this? But he knew it was going to be massive, and he rammed it down people's throats week after week to the point where he started the dance to the track. It was like I can't remember what it was like. He started that, and you could see the whole wave of the people on that dance floor dancing to that record. And he played all stuff like E.T. Boogie, all the electro stuff. He broke all that, you know. I mean, and then he'd go and play like Kingsman Daz, Love Design. He played Kinky Fox, So Different, and then go on a dance floor and start dancing with this group called Torso, who some of them were part of a group called the Pasadenas. You know, it was a great. He was such a. He was a.
I think you said it right. You called it right. He was an institution. Yeah, he was an institution.
And all these people dropping like flies right now. You know, it's so. Yeah.
So listen. So anyway, we're going to start to wrap this up briefly, and it's been a fantastic conversation, surrounded by full of positivity and inspiring words, and so many people in the chat have been listening to everything you're saying, and they've been transported back to some of those memories. And again, we wanted to make sure that your story got told, because you had stated earlier that sometimes stories get told and they're not exactly correct.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, there are people that tell stories. There are people that write stuff down from referencing, but not from when they were there, when it was actually happening. You know, they've got pockets of bits and pieces and they put it together. And as you know, history is what people have written, you know, so people just go that by verbatim. Well, that is what happened. But if you don't get it from the source, you know, then you know, it gets to a point where, you know, some people have got to tell their story. Like there are people that you should have on your show to tell their story, like Frankie Fonsette, like Norman J.
You would be surprised. You would be surprised, you know. So just those two names you mentioned. Frankie's story was brilliantly captured with Lenny Fontana, as was Norman's. But there are a lot of people in this chat who have come along to watch you today. I've reached out to them, and I wouldn't use the word shy, but they just don't feel they want to be in front of the camera, you know.
I'm shy. I'm not a confident person. You know what I mean by that. But I'm not. When I say a story, when I tell you these stories that happened to me, they're just things that happen to me. But in the grand scheme of things, you look at it, other people go, "Oh my God, Jesus Christ!" Like, you know, and I don't think of it like that. I just think of it as something that happened in my life, you know. But people, it's important as going in this industry to let people know how it all started, how it happened, what happened, you know. And
you see, lads, you hear it from Ricky. It's just about sharing your truth.
Sharing your journey. You've got to share your journey to people, because there are people out there that love hearing these stories, how it all started. I mean, I heard a story that flipped me out by I think Lenny was interviewing somebody, Angie Stone, something about Angie Stone. And Angie Stone was the vocalist behind all the Sugar Hill Gang stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, like all the oh my God, all the rap stuff.
I can't think who it was. I don't know if it was Angie Stone. I don't remember him having Angie Stone.
She's actually sang backing vocals to all the Sugar. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is a story that you think, oh my God, I never knew that, you know. Like, anyway.
Well, we've been around for so long as well. It is easy to forget how much you forgot. You know, like the Blockster thing from tonight's conversation.
There's so many stories, Andy, and so many. I hope by saying these stories, and also, I've got to say this: there is a bit of luck involved. There is a bit of luck and a lot of hard work. But one thing that you got to take away from this discussion is all those things that I mentioned about the hit records and all that. It was done from our own back. We never gave up. Do you understand what I mean? We got blackballed, we got pushed away. We don't like this record, don't know this record. But if you believe in something, you make sure you go through with it and pursue it, and don't say no, just go for it. Salsoul Nugget was from, that was made through frustration. And because we got turned down, we knew it was something and we pursued it. And it got to the point where, you know, I'll be talking to you now about it. You know, Blockster was, you know, it was something under duress, you know. Mm-hmm. So my point is this: just don't give up. Just keep at it. Just don't let people say. No. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I get it, but if you believe in something, you just make sure you pursue it and take it there.
There you go. Wise words. Well, you know, we could have easily sat talking for many hours. I say this with all the great interviews we've conducted here, but family life gets in the way. We'll get you back on. I'd
love to come back, and then I'm sure there's stories that I need to write down.
Well, I'm not going to spot anybody up because it wouldn't be fair of me, but there's a few people names that I've mentioned tonight who are with us watching that I would love. I'm going to tell you to persuade them to come back on with you at some point in the future, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you know, I've got to give full maximum props to Mr. Abi Shah. He is the man. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be talking to you now. Big up Mr. Fran Sidoli, the brother who I never, you know, I should have had. You know, he was a diamond. All you people out there, you've inspired me and Fran and a lot, even Andy, you know, to do what we're doing right now. You know, so thank you very much for that. You know, if it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't have any stories. We wouldn't have any stories. You know?
Beautiful. Ricky, we will definitely talk again in the future. I'll leave you to the rest of your evening. I'm just going to say goodbye to everyone. Respect, brother. It's been beautiful.
Take care.
Thank you. All right. And there goes Ricky. Is it all working? Yes, it's all working. Thank you, everybody, for your constant comments throughout the course of the evening. Good evening, Colin. How are you? Let me take a moment to just say hi to a few people before we end tonight. Pugwash was telling us a little bit about Angie B. Stone. Colin Williams pops in and says, mic drop. Easy, mate. Hope your show went well. Deli G through to the end. And Steve says, brilliant conversation. Hope to catch up at Southport. Mr. Paul, just up the road. Good evening, Tony. I'm glad you heard that, and I'm glad you found it interesting. So look, on the screen here, you can see we're going to be having another conversation. So I'm just checking to make sure that my mouth's in sync with the audio. It is. Okay. Next time, we'll be talking to the usual suspects from the Soulful House Mafia, a tongue-in-cheek name given to us by Mark Wilkinson, Craig Bartlett, the man himself, Mr. Lee Wright, and yours truly. We're all going to be back together on the stream next Monday, sharing more stories of some of the crazy events that have happened to us down the years. And we'd love you to join us and be another part of the conversation. Across the bottom of the screen, you can see a few names. These are people who I haven't actually given a lot of credit to over the last few weeks because I've been too busy just ending off the show. But I wanted to say a very special thank you to all of the crew who are part of my Access program. See all the names at the bottom there. Respect. So I will start to wrap up and say to everybody, thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Nikki. Abby. Thank you, my friend. Let's talk soon. Reggie, stateside. Big up yourself. And everybody else. Okay, I've taken up more than enough of your time. If you are watching the recording, please do leave a comment. Let us know what you loved about that. Let us know if you have anything to add to the conversation. And if you took any value from this conversation, then please do click the like button because it'll help me reach a few more people in their YouTube feed. Okay, thank you very much. I am out of here.